Hello there, and thank you for joining me in yet another edition of the series, The Storymakers. That's a series which aims to take a look at the ones who compile and determine what makes the headlines, the front pages, the very, very important parts of the news. My name is Babatunde Femi Okunla. We've had a series of interesting guests, and today is not going to be any exception either. We'll discuss with yet another member of the 40th state of the realm today. My guest today is a multimedia journalist. He's also had a series of experience spanning up to 10 years at the point in time, even as we speak. He's covered health, gender, development. He has a background in science. As a matter of fact, he has a background in nutrition and biochemistry. Yet another member of the sciences coming to the art to take over. What are we going to do with them? I have Judd joining me on this particular edition. Judd, it's good to have you.
Nice meeting you.
And I literally had to drag him on this couch, screaming, kicking, and what have you. Forget about the facade. Judd, it's good to have you.
Yes.
I'm very curious about this. First and foremost, there's so many things about you. You are one more journalist who's come from the sciences to the arts. All right. And you obviously excelling at what you do very well. There's so many questions, but I want to start off by asking you about the misconception about journalists. You know, that you feel, being a journalist, having excelled at the trade, when you meet people, what's one misconception that's often had about journalists?
Quite a number of them. First of all, depending on the kind of persons you meet, they look at you and they think you're one firebrand who is out to change the world. Yes, you do. Okay. Yes, of course you aspire to change the world, the one person at a time, but you're not Superman. You can only do your bit. That's one misconception or rather perception people have toward journalists. Secondly, whoever meets you think you must have studied English or the arts or come from an arts background. That's wrong. I think the last time I was in an arts class was in JS3. Beyond that, I have never been.
Wow.
And thirdly, okay, let's stick with those two. But those are the two prevalent misconceptions or perceptions that I won't call them misconceptions because it's their perception anyway. Right? I have no right to call it wrong, but those are what people tend to think. To my sense of journalism and journalists.
All right. I know now a lot of your work and a lot of your story focuses on the local people, the people at the grassroots, and then you have to do this or interface with the people, with the policymakers. Mm-hmm. And I know it's a very tricky condition and a tricky situation because you get too close to the people at the grassroots, you've been seen as being anti-government, you move to the people at the top and then the people at the bottom says, no, it's one of them.
You've been bought over.
It's a difficult role, talking about being that bridge. So I want you to talk to me about that role as you had to do that interface on major issues, gender, development, health.
In a way, it's been easy because when you look at what you actually have to do, or when they say the end justifies the means, when you look at the end, what you want to do is bring the life of people down there into focus.
Okay.
When you consider that to be your end, then you really don't care about what people in the corridors of power think about what you're doing.
Okay.
If you justify to yourself that this is what you want to do, you want to bring the life of these people, this community into focus, then just go with that. If you're honest to yourself, but you really have to be honest with yourself on what you're doing. That's the way I see it. But then again, you talked about a bridge. Then again, when that's where you depart a little bit from citizen journalism as a true trained journalist. You go beyond this circle of banging the drum about what's happening in your community and how everybody is feeling this and that, how this is going wrong and that is going wrong. You really can't go. You have to go beyond just talking about it. Present it as a problem, as a case study to people, your representatives in power, in the corridors of power, and actually get something done about it. So I think that's a departure point for between citizen journalism and the sort of things that you and I do.
I hear what you're saying, and if there's something I pick, it's the fact that there are always going to be opinions about whatever it is you do.
Whatever you do, people will talk.
And your job as a journalist is
And
not
when you
necessarily.
don't do, people still will talk.
And you look like you haven't exactly given a hoot about what's been done. Once the job is done, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the job being done. Giving a hoot about what people say, I would say I'm more concerned when I'm not so concerned when people speak negative about what I do. I'm more concerned when people talk about how it hasn't affected them the way I would have imagined it would.
Okay.
I am more concerned when a community I've visited tells me or says that, okay, after you were here, this happened and that happened.
Hmm.
I'm more concerned about that than to hear that somebody in the Ministry of Health said I reported this thing and didn't go that way, or I misquoted someone, or that. I'm more concerned about this part than that part.
All right. Well, still talking about roles. Let's talk about the continent Africa, which, of course, obviously continues to dominate the news for so many not so nice reasons most times. Let's talk about the place of development as we've seen it occur right now, and the role of journalism right now. There's been a lot of different eras, a lot of transitional governments, what have you, corruption's been brought to the fore, the reportage is changing right now. And I want to ask you, as someone who's been in this space for about 10 years right now, do you think we're getting it right? Or are we right where we need to be? Or should a lot more be getting done at this point in time?
I would say yes to all of it. We're getting it right 1 year, one government, one transition at a time. We are not where we want to be, but where we are now is the result of the efforts we've put in. It wouldn't be fair to denigrate everything we've tried to achieve, all of the efforts we've put in. Yes, it may not have given us our ideal situation, but we are where we are because we have done something, we have put in some effort. If we didn't put in any effort, I guess would be maybe somewhere in the 1930s, considering how fast the world is moving.
Okay, now let's talk about some of your works. I really want to focus on this. And while researching you, I try to think about, okay,
You
what
researched
question?
me.
Yes, I researched you. Yes, and I don't know why that shocks him. That shocks
That's
him a
a
lot.
new one. I've always been the one on the
Yeah,
research. And
I assure
on
you,
people.
and I'm sure after this, a lot of people are going to go, who's this person?
Don't Anyway, you won't find me on Google.
You should. You see? The secret life of journalists, as we say. Now, I want to ask you something about perception and stories. You've covered a lot of stories, from conferences. As I write this right now, we're somewhere in Geneva, and it's covering the World Health Assembly again, And there is a place where you write the stories. You know the effort you put into each one of the stories. And the reception, on the other hand, is something else. Because people read what you write and they watch it and they're like, oh my God, Judd, I loved this particular story because of this. But then again, you as a journalist, you might have a different opinion. And if I asked you about your favorite works, say top 2 or maybe top 1, and most impacting work, which not by what people had to say, but what you feel, knowing the kind of work you put into it, what would that be? What story would that be?
Okay, I would answer that in 2 ways. First, there are those stories that took from me a lot of effort. They were difficult to produce.
E.g.?
For instance, visiting a community in Gaye. It's a community in Kuje Area Council of Abuja, of the FCT. It's actually 3 hours from the center of Kuje by road, by very rough road, very, very unbelievable terrain. You have to climb hills as steep as the side of a house, go through water, and luckily, I was able to get onto the back of an SUV, a 4x4, a 4-wheel drive, but still that didn't make any that didn't make the journey easy. At the point we got bogged down in a dried up riverbed. Anyway, the long and short of it is we got to this community and there was no phone reception. There was no, not even hospital. There was no health facility, let alone what you'd call a hospital in standard sense. They had a school and some health workers on outreach converted the classrooms to theaters to operate on residents who had one issue or the other. And another classroom was converted to a pharmacy. So you had two people sitting at the window passing out drugs to the residents who had gone through consultation with other doctors. It was like a mini health center set up in just one afternoon. And this community had only two of its children, who had ever studied anything to do with health. Funny enough, they graduated that September from a health school of health in Zamfara and came back. So when the surgeries were done, the surgeons were leaving. They put all of the sick people in one classroom, and these two boys who studied community health became watchers over them.
Wow.
They were the doctors, they were the nurses, they were the pharmacists, they were everything, until whenever the doctors the surgeons who did the surgery decided to come back again to look at them. So the what I'm trying to say is that story took a lot of effort.
Right. So did it receive the coverage you expected? It would.
It did. The coverage. What I simply expected from it was to have impact. Yes, it did have impact, because now the community has been able to liaise with health organizations and they've given over a portion of land and say, yes, come and build a health center for us. We're ready to take care of it as our own. That's a positive impact that I like to see in every story, but unfortunately not every story generates such impact.
Well, story of our lives, right?
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk to someone who's watching you right now, who's like, I wanted to find out a bit about this. I'm from the scientists, and I'm sure they've learned quite a couple of things from, watching and listening to you. What's one advice you'd give young and upcoming journalists right now? Maybe something you thought, I wish I had someone tell me this 5 years earlier. Perhaps I would have made more speed. Or, this was the advice that really worked well for me. Or this one should work well for your generation.
That's a difficult one. But yes, advice is good, and also is something called mentorship. I really didn't have a mentor growing up. I was in sciences, yes, but I loved to read and I just wanted to write. So I began writing my first stories, maybe I will call them fiction anyway. I began writing my first fiction stories in JS3.
Boy meets girl.
No, not boy meets girl.
And he barged into
Adventure.
the room and he kicked down the door and the dragon came down or whatever.
No, not.
Not
Well, they were more along the lines of Pace Setter.
Oh, the Pace
So
Setter
you had
series.
things like Kukuruku Beach. For me, Lagos was the Island Cove. I planned the whole set of adventure there, where this guy would do this one will shoot this one down. It was so crazy, like what do you call them? Indiana Jones.
Oh yeah,
Those sort of stories anyway. So I did all of that. I read a lot. I mean, by JS3 I was reading novels exceeding 700 pages.
Wow.
And by SS2 anyway, when I was writing my school living certificate, I began delving into books like Awake magazine, the Jehovah's Witnesses magazine. That really taught me how to write. And Time magazine, Newsweek magazine, those taught me how to write features. But of course, I had a problem with news writing because I could make 90 or 100 in features, 90% in features, and the first time around, I failed news writing actually.
That's one more thing you didn't know. You heard this first. Yeah, you heard this first. That's a true life Nigerian story. Yeah, that's journalism story.
That's my shameful truth. I failed news writing. Anyway, before I got to that point,
that's ironic. Wow. Yeah,
I passed. I resat it anyway. And I passed it. Anyway, before I got to that point, I was done with my SSC. I began, I told myself I wanted to move beyond fiction. I wanted to write about real people write non-fiction. And I wrote a couple of articles. I was living in Benin City then, and I went to the Nigerian Observer.
Okay.
And I don't know where this confidence came upon me. I just walked into the editor's office and I said I had stories I wanted to share with you. And I looked at them. He said they were nice. What qualification do you have? And I said I just finished my SSC. I'm waiting for my results and jam things to get admission. And I said, well, they are nice, but we can't use them if you don't have the least qualification.
Wow. So what did you do in that case?
So I walked out and I just forgot about it. And then I got admission into University of Benin. And in my first year, all of a sudden, I spent like a month in school, and then school closed out. The lecturers were on strike. That long ASU strike.
Yeah.
So I went back and enrolled in journalism.
So
because I wanted that qualification. I wanted to write.
I've gotten a couple of things from the story you just told. You have the tenacity right there. You have the need to be able to knock on doors, regardless of, a yes or a no, and then still being able to get the paperwork. Yeah. Maybe not immediately, so you're getting that right if you're listening to this. Mentorship as well.
Yeah.
So taking a break from all of that, and we're still back here, and I'm with Judd Leonard Okafor. That's three names.
Two names.
Two names.
Judd Leonard is one name.
Judd Leonard
is one name.
That's one name.
Yes. Judd Leonard is one name.
Mm-hmm.
That's my first name. My surname is Okafor, but if you want to make it three, I have a middle name, Ekene, right there in the middle.
No, let me get so let me get this straight. Back in school, they're like Judd Leonard. Like Judd.
Actually, back in school, people didn't call me Judd Leonard. That was a mouthful. They called me Jules.
Jude, not
Jules.
Judd.
Jules. Yes.
Why? Oh, Judd Leonard. Oh,
Jules.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, okay. It's been quite an interactive time. We sit down here, talk. Especially maybe because we're discovering some hidden things and hidden details that we wouldn't otherwise tell. You wouldn't read what you're listening to right now in the biography space. You've got the more conservative stuff, multimedia development journalist. This and all of that. So this is us getting
the real deal.
The real deal, yeah. The true
down and dirty
journalism story. All right, now I want to talk to you about mediums, because one interesting thing about you is I noticed perhaps you kicked off with print journalism, and you've gone on to do vlogs, you've done audio, visuals, and all of that. So when it comes to your job, what medium? It's also got a terrific presence online. It tends to be modest about that, but you should look him up. It's probably going to come up with like 1,000,000,001 searches on him when you look him up on the internet. But when it comes to multimedia stuff and different mediums to pass across the message, which has come in more effective from your experience?
In my experience, I didn't get to choose what media platform I got to work on. It just happened to be that I was working in a particular situation or location, and that was the media or the medium, the platform that was available. But if you have to choose, let me backtrack a bit. So whatever was available, I tried to adapt my reporting to it. So when I was in print, I tried to write the best feature articles I could possibly get, so that I could carry along my readers, make them see what I was seeing, make them feel things. And when I moved on to broadcast, radio and TV side by side, I stopped basically writing those kind of printy features, and I moved on. I learned actually, I'm not embarrassed to say this, but I learned from people like, especially BBC World Service. Yeah. I learned BBC World Service, Radio Netherlands, Deutsche Welle Radio, Voice of America, but most especially BBC World Service. I was so deep into their documentaries and news packages. That's how I grew my news and reporting skills on radio
Hmm.
and TV as well, even. So it helped me produce emotional packages.
Emotional packages.
Yes, I could create news packages or news reports that would carry a listener or viewer along. So when I produce my news packages, I don't get to say what you are going to hear. I don't tell you the news.
Hmm.
I show you the news if you're watching, or I make you hear the news if you're listening on radio. That you understand what I'm saying? When you
I
use
do.
ambient
I
sounds
do.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. There was one.
It's almost like the fly on the wall feel. Like I'm here.
Yeah.
I can feel it. I can see it. I can hear it.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one particular news report I heard when the bombardment of Baghdad began in, when we had those war on Iraq.
Mm.
And I can't remember the name of this reporter, this BBC reporter, when the Ministry of Defense was bombed. And that report, I was producing Word at 6:30 then on the broadcasting service in Benin, and I watched this report, and I had to watch it again and again and again and again, just because of the opening sentence. He just showed the night sky, and it was quiet. He simply said, "A moment of silence," and then this, and you hear the bomb blast.
Wow. Storytelling.
That for me was, told myself, this is what you should do. This is how it should be done. And so when I moved to Lokoja, I adopted that, and it made my pieces very, very popular in Lokoja. Then I was working with Confluence Television and Grace FM in Lokoja. So, back to the point, your message can determine your medium. And you can adapt your message to fit your medium, or you can let your medium go with your message. Either way, you have to be conscious of your message and your medium.
Well, thank you so much for this, because
And sorry, I forgot to add
please.
there. So that's print and radio broadcast. But when you move on to online, it's a combination of everything.
Oh, that he's a multimedia.
Yeah,
journalist,
When you
remember?
move
So-
on to multimedia,
Yeah.
it's a combination of everything. There's print, there are the photos, the visual, the sound. Everything can come in together as one, and it's all about how you manage it. Of course, when you consider things in international relations and foreign policy, maybe the U.S. government might want to shut down Voice of America, for instance, because CNN is everywhere. Yes, but I think one argument I heard then when it was being discussed, somebody said, yes, CNN is in every hotel around the capitals of the world, but VOA gets into the caves of Bujumbura. So again,
Everyone's got their own audience.
So of course now radio has moved on, broadcasting has moved on to digital and everything. I honestly cannot remember the last time I watched TV news.
Of course, you're everywhere. Yeah.
But then
He's in the village today, and then he's in Geneva tomorrow, and then where else is he in? In space probably next week or next month.
Yeah. So, but then I carry my phone around and I have my data subscription. So I watch, I read, I get my news on the go. So I won't have the time to sit in front of the TV or radio to watch or listen. That's where the multimedia news packaging comes in. So maybe I'm the audience for that. You just have to consider me as well when you produce your news.
And there he goes. You say that's the marketing part. We don't have the market and the profile. Thank you so much for this. I had to ask that because again, you have a lot of young people who are looking to burst into media, and they hear things like, and they come to me and they say, "Well, is it radio?" And I'm like, "No, it depends on the story you want to tell. It's the most important thing is impact, which is going to tell the story better, And these days, even with radio, you can tell powerful stories and show people, paint pictures from your imagery. With the online thing, yes, on the go, it's accessible on the spot. You have social media driven journalism. But thank you so much for this. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I think right now we're wrapping up already. But I want to ask you this. Now, what's next for Judd? What's next for Judd? Or have you been too busy thinking about that? Because you're at the stage right now, and I say this, and I'm putting him on the spot. This wasn't one of the things he had no idea I was going to ask this question, but Now, one of the things is right now we are past the era where people say, "Oh, when it comes to mentorship, you've seen a lot of things, you've done a lot of things, you're soaking all of this." The disadvantage a lot of us had was the fact that in our part of the world we did not document a lot of this important journeys. So you had the Yinka Craigs, you had the Austin Comer, you had a lot of them. And right now, how many documents can you point at to say, well, these legacies they left behind? So why are you still here? Why are you still young? What's the plan, for the upcoming generation?
Okay, I already started that when my master's project was on the use of electronic books on campuses, specifically University of Ibadan campus. Wanted to see how students use this. And that research tries to show that the traditional media consumption that we've been used to is slightly going out of fashion. So I'm looking forward to a future where most of the knowledge material we consume will be digital. I have paper books around me, but I hardly get to read them. The novels I read are on the Kindle or an e-book reader. I'm that kind of person. And then again, apart from doing more research into media studies and media ethics and media consumption and media patterns, I want to finish up or dust up some mentoring of some upcoming journalists who I think have potential and teach them what I've been taught, what I've learned for myself, what I've soaked up in the course of working as a journalist. I want to pass that knowledge on, and then I want to move off into the sunset of research. I believe that...
The academics?
Yes, a bit of it. I say that because I believe that as I get older, I may not have the energy of youth anymore on my side, so I can't jump from one state to the other. I can't jump from Adamawa to Maiduguri and go all over the places I used to. And I don't want to sit behind the desk.
Isn't that the idea?
No, seriously, I do not want an office job. I don't want to sit behind the desk.
That's why we all chill. You talk to on-the-field reporters and they tell you, but the sad thing is, the more you rise, you become the media mogul, and a lot of work's going to be paperwork.
You move toward management and then end up on it behind the desk.
Like, how did I get here?
I don't want that. I think I'd rather leave before it got to that point where I had to sit behind the desk.
Well, that's not happening anytime soon. It sounds like one of those movies. They're like, "Oh, don't go, Judd."
No, it's not time yet. I still have lots of energy.
Of course,
I'm going to exhaust all of it before I go.
All right. Well, that's great. That's great. So young people out there who are looking up for mentorship and all of that, well, you know where to go to right now. You better start sending those mails and, tweeting and Facebook like
that. A Twitter handle will do.
I want to be like you when I grow up. Yeah, a Twitter handle will do as well. And that's displayed right now on the screen, even as you check this out. That's the size of the program. I wish we could just go on and on and on. But I feel like, yes, I've made it a little uncomfortable, but I think he's enjoying all of this at the moment. That's it on this edition of the Storytellers. My guest is Judd Leonard Okafor. Well, and you hear a lot more about him. Google him up. Google is your friend. My name is Babatunde Femi Okunla. Thanks for watching. Who we're going to be interviewing next? Well, you just have to tune into another series to find out. Bye.